Toine, welcome once again. Today is the 15th of May, 5 o'clock Liberland time. How are you doing? It's been a couple of weeks since last time that we spoke. And yeah, did anything happen? How are you feeling today? Let's do a small introduction first, and then I have a couple of subjects I would like to talk with you about. So I prepared something today, Toine.
Um, well, um, we were sort of, how shall I put this? I was sort of telling you my life story, so we could pick up where we left off.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Uh, and we usually have some viewer questions, but I suppose you could ask your own questions too.
Well, the thing is, Twan, this week, upcoming week, there is going to be new Dutch regulations starting regarding crypto businesses. And that's why many startups have announced in the last 5 days that they are going to quit. And I would like to briefly, we don't have to go into it all too deep, but I would like to tell you about it because I'm not sure that you are aware of it. And I would like to ask you what to make out of all this. And on top of that, if the government in the end manages to completely regulate any in and out movement of Bitcoin, then what is Bitcoin worth after that? So I'm not sure. Maybe we should start with that, or should we? Maybe we should just continue on your story. That's also it's also an
Well,
interesting thing.
I could start with this question.
Yeah, let me then briefly introduce it. There is a company called Nox.com and there is a company called Bitkassa.nl. They provide a intermediate service for the buying and selling of Bitcoin and altcoins, and they have both recently announced that the service cannot exist any longer after the regulations take place because um, the costs are simply too high. There is a 5,000 entry fee, then there is a 20,000 maintenance fee, and then on top of that, you of course need to have a legal team that takes care of all the new regulations, which costs even more. So basically, the cost is what kills all these companies now. And what to think of it?
What do I think of it? It's criminal.
It's criminal, yeah.
The government,
I have
the,
not made friends by telling that to these companies over the past 4 years, because this regulation is above our head for many months. And
yeah.
since the start, I go against it and I tell everybody that crypto regulates itself. We don't need regulation in crypto.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. And they don't want
Well,
to listen. And so, yeah.
but that's not unique to crypto. I mean, government regulation is always useless and worse than useless. It's usually the case that the cost of government regulation outweighs any benefits that might be there. Um, so this is no exception. In a way, I'm surprised that it's taken the government this long to start regulating cryptocurrencies. 'Cause normally, they are very keen on regulating anything and everything. Um, so I guess crypto companies have been lucky that governments also tend to be very slow
Yeah. And
and,
inefficient.
and inefficient. Yes.
Yeah.
So I suppose that crypto currencies and crypto companies have been lucky to have been left alone for so long, and now the golden age is over. That's probably how it is.
Fun is
And
out of it.
yeah, well, governments of course can't enforce their rules everywhere and against everyone. So there will be people who will ignore these regulations and who will. Some of those will be caught and will be punished and will be jailed and fined and stuff like that, and others will be left alone or will be too difficult to catch. So I don't think this is the end of crypto. Crypto will continue. It just means that it's no longer as free as it used to be. Now we have the burden of government regulation to carry on our shoulders. I always compare government to a big metal ball that's connected to your ankles with a chain. And people that could run are now forced to stumble instead.
Yeah.
So we still make progress, we still get ahead, but very, very slowly. So people that could run are forced to stumble, and that's delaying our growth, and that's delaying all sorts of problems being solved. It's delaying all sorts of progress from occurring. So it's a huge shame, and it wouldn't need to be that way, but that's unfortunately how it is, because a lot of people assume that government regulation is good and necessary. And until that changes, government will continue on this course. Um, yeah, I don't know exactly. I haven't studied these regulations, so I don't know how strict they will be, how burdensome they will be.
Let
But
me tell you,
that,
they are more strict than the recommendations. The Dutch government puts extra regulations on top of the recommendations out of Europe.
yeah, I'm not surprised. Um, so what I assume will happen is a lot of small companies in the crypto field will shut down. Well, you already just said that
Yeah, it's
many
happening. Yeah.
organizations exactly that. But there will be a few big ones that will be left. And that's typical. Any industry that gets regulated, this is typically what happens. Look at the banking industry. I mean, in the 19th century, there were many hundreds or thousands of banks per country.
Mhm.
Now, the typical country has just two or three major banks, and that's it. Um, the same is true for insurance companies. The same is true for universities, for schools, for farms, even. The trend is as soon as government starts regulating something, the little guy goes under, and only a few big companies are left in the end.
I can
Uh,
also tell you that with these regulations, two Dutch banks have announced that they will now start to trade Bitcoin for their customers.
yeah,
ING and ABM.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the small new startups, the innovators, are dying, and what takes it over are the traditional banks. And with that comes the question: how useful is Bitcoin going to be if all these transactions from and to fiat are going to be traceable? Because in the end, the weakness of Bitcoin in the end is the traceability of it. And if every transaction that you do is going to be stamped by the government, basically, then what's the benefit of using it over a traditional currency?
Well, I mean, like I said, I haven't studied this thoroughly. I don't know exactly what the impact will be. Um, um, but like I said, I don't think it's going to be the end of crypto. It'll just be different. It won't be as we were used to it.
There is a famous
Uh,
Bitcoiner, Andreas Antonopoulos, who said you can regulate your country out of Bitcoin, but you cannot regulate Bitcoin out of your country.
yeah. Well, of course, I assume that people who decide to completely stay under the radar and anonymous, um, I assume some people like that will continue to exist and will continue to do so, and a certain number of them will not get caught and will be able to continue doing it. But it does mean that a lot of people are going to be discouraged from using cryptocurrencies. A lot of people do not want to take any risks. A lot of people do not want to risk fines or jail time, obviously. So for all those people, it's going to be very different in the future. And a lot of I mean, until Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency is going to be accepted by the supermarkets and the stores, until that happens, You need an off ramp. At some point, when you need to do shopping, you need to do groceries. You're going to have to transform your cryptocurrencies into a local government currency because the supermarket won't let you shop there otherwise.
Yeah,
And
I'm
that
currently I'm
that
currently showing the webpage of Bitkassa, who was the intermediate to do exactly that. So you could buy your groceries through a supermarket that was connected with Bitkassa, and it's kind of a credit card system then, right?
yeah. Okay, but that's of course the weak spot. All these companies who are in the business of allowing cryptocurrency holders to do their groceries by assisting them with the conversion. Those all those people can be jailed. All those CEOs can be jailed. I mean, there's no Bitcoin. There's never been a Bitcoin company or Bitcoin CEO that was under pressure of being jailed or being fined. Um, and that's not going to change in the future, I would presume. It's still going to be decentralized, but since the government can threaten to jail all those companies who assist people in conversion from government currencies to cryptocurrencies and back, if all these people are going to be wiped out or going to be, well, doing as the regulators tell them to do and jumping through hoops, then government will control the cryptocurrency world to a large extent, unfortunately. So I've never had this idea that some people have that cryptocurrencies cannot be regulated and can just escape regulation, and that we can just continue as we always have, even if the regulators come in. I don't think that's true. I think unfortunately the governments can cause a lot of damage uh, in any field, but in this field as well.
It's visible today for sure. There is a lot of red on markets that highly relate on these businesses, altcoins that highly relate on these businesses. And one of them announced only a couple of hours ago that they are going to close, and the price tanked with over 20% right now. So um, yeah, it's a shame. I hate to see it. I really would like to offer them a nice server from Liberland so that we can run the business from there, but unfortunately we are not there yet. Anyway, Twan, let's close down this black page in the history of Bitcoin and continue our conversation a little bit. But you have to remind me where we ended last time.
Oh, yeah, we were in the year 2010. Um, and I think already started talking about what happened when one of my companies, one of the companies that I manage, HSC, went bankrupt. I think already talked about the type of measures that the receiver took after bankruptcy was declared.
Yeah.
Um, um, so, as I said, the guy was on a crusade. Um, One possible explanation for how he acted was that he really disliked the libertarian philosophy, and really disliked the things I had said in public, like taxation is theft, and the government's a criminal organization, and uh, tax avoidance is not just a human right, but actually it's a moral duty.
I
Uh,
personally give this explanation a high probability, Twan.
yeah. Um, so he um, if I tell the same thing twice, if I start telling you something I already told you before, then feel free to cut me off because
Well,
I'm.
I do remember that we spoke about this receiver and that he at one point collected some of your books which didn't get registered, and then he kind of did like he never received it, like he didn't
Yeah.
get your administration, and that he basically that there were all kind of very unpleasant administrative nonsense happening to your company and you personally, and that is a part that we did get in one of the earlier ones.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, that is correct. So, in order to be paid, well, in the Netherlands, the receivers have lobbied for a government handout. So successfully lobbied. So the rule in the Netherlands is that if a receiver can get his salary paid by the government or guaranteed by the government if he meets certain conditions. And his salary is usually somewhere around between 120 and 250 euros an hour, depending on his seniority and how difficult the bankruptcy case is. And so the first condition that the receiver had to meet to qualify for this government guaranteed salary was that he had to have a suspicion of bankruptcy fraud. And that was a condition that was very easy to meet for him. So he suspected me of bankruptcy fraud. The second condition is that he had to be willing to investigate it. And he was quite happy to investigate it at this rate of probably somewhere around 200.
Basically, the suspicion happened in a dream, and then he woke up and he felt like he had to live the dream.
The third condition was that he had to be willing to prosecute me, in the sense that he had to be willing to file a report with the prosecutor's office accusing me of bankruptcy fraud. And the way he met that requirement is very ingenious. He called the special branch of the Dutch tax authorities that has police powers to investigate tax fraud. It's an organization called Field. So he called them and said, "I think you have an interesting case here. I think I came across some tax fraud here." So he invited them to his office, and they came, and he allowed them to copy everything, and he asked them to write the report to the prosecutor's office for him, so he only had to sign it, and they were happy to oblige. And for that one signature, all by itself, he was paid almost 3,000 euros of taxpayer money.
Great.
Yeah. He also had to be willing to sue me in court for the bankruptcy deficit. And he was quite happy to sue me because he could hire his own employees or his own partners in his own law firm to do this.
Twan, maybe we should write this guy a letter today and ask how he feels about Bitcoin. What do you think about that? And we sign it with HonklerHangout. All the community puts an autograph on that, and we invite the guy on the show.
Yeah. So he was happy to sue me, and the final condition was that he had to show with some probability that I was not without any assets, so that the guarantee would turn out to be a complete payment, because there was nothing to recover from my personal assets. That was another condition. And at the time, I owned the home. I bought it for €500,000, and he seemed to be able to convince some bureaucrat at the Justice Department that there was that since I owned a €500,000 home, that there would be some assets to come after. So he checked all the boxes on the form, the application form, and he was awarded the government guarantee of his salary. And by the time he was finished, or actually it still isn't finished. The bankruptcy still has not been completed. But at one point he just took off and handed it over to a partner of his when almost all of the work was done. and at that time he had written about 1,100 hours
Yeah.
at
And
this.
they're good at that. I've heard many stories. Also, Mount Gox goes into a great bankruptcy.
Yeah. And if his rate is something like 250 euros an hour or
Yeah,
so, you can count how much that is. That's over a quarter of a million
it's
euros.
insane
Salary.
numbers.
Yeah. Um, so it was quite a boon for him. But to be honest, there are much bigger boons out there. I don't know if you've heard about this Dutch bank that went bankrupt in the 2008 crisis
Sorry,
called.
could you repeat that? I was reading the chat.
Well, all the banks in the Netherlands needed bailouts in the
Yeah, yeah.
2009 crisis, and they all got one except for one bank. There was one bank that was not bailed out, was DSB Bank,
DSB, yes. It was
because
a fairly new bank.
it was a new bank, but more importantly, it was owned by one guy. This was not a stock listed, publicly
Yeah,
listed
yeah, yeah.
company where the managers that where the decision makers, they were hired managers who were part of the old boys network. But this bank was different. It was owned by an entrepreneur, by one guy.
Mr.
And
Scheringa.
yeah, and so he was not part of the old boys network. He was not part of this political elite, this the ruling class. He was this guy who had only finished grade school and started selling stuff door to door. That and he made his way up to owning a bank.
Yeah,
So he was completely different from the normal banksters.
yeah.
So he was the only bank. His bank was the only bank that was not bailed out. It went bankrupt instead. And the government appointed two lawyers as the trustees in bankruptcy, as receivers of this bank. And every single month, a lot of people owed the bank interest and payments on the principal. So there's a huge amount of money flowing into this bankrupt bank every single month. And as you probably know, it's the receivers who have priority. They're the first ones to get paid. All the other people who who uh, who who have a claim against this bankrupt bank, they come later. It's the receivers that
What
come
about
first.
the state, Twan? Do they come after the receiver, or is the receiver the state?
No, it's not. It's not. It's formally it's not the state. It's the court that appoints a receiver, which is a lawyer. So this lawyer is not employed by the state. He works for himself. A lawyer is
Okay,
normally
okay.
self-employed, or he has some partners in a partnership in the law firm.
But he goes
And,
ahead of the state. So he is first and
yes,
then the state.
yes. So
Okay,
first
okay.
the receivers, then come the tax authorities, and then after the receiver, well, the most bankruptcies in the Netherlands, by the time they get closed, they're resolved. In about 96% of bankruptcies, the only creditors that get paid are the receivers.
Yeah.
And then the other 4%, the tax authorities come second. So when you're a normal creditor, you're not the tax collector, you're not the tax authorities, you're not the receiver, you're a
You can
normal
just write
creditor.
it off. Write it off.
It's extremely unlikely you'll get paid anything. And the explanation is simply that these receivers tend to keep billing hours. Until there's no more money left.
And they know exactly how much there is to take, so they know how many hours they can write.
Right, and when they know that there's nothing more to bill against, there's no more assets to bill against, that's when they say to the court, well, we might as well end it now because there's nothing left to pay to these other creditors anymore
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Might as well end it now because there's no more, there's nothing to loot anymore. Basically, they don't put it in these words, obviously, but this is how it goes in practice. Now, this bank, DSB Bank, that was a lot of money to distribute. So I'm asking you for a guess. Guess how much the receivers have billed this bankrupt bank.
Twan, before I'm going to answer that question, I'm going to raffle one raffle. What about that? Because we have a raffle going on every 20 minutes in my stream also this stream, and a total of 9 people participated. I'm gonna pick a winner. Let's see who won it this round. Crypto Bro, congratulations. I'm gonna double this prize because we have a 10-day streak going on. Let's spin the wheel for Crypto Bro. Here we go. 600 renew cash with a multiplier. Multiplier of 1 makes 1200 because I was doubling this one. So 1200 renew cash. And then, Toine, to make the cliffhanger even bigger, I'm going to run and get myself 1 Corona, because 1 Corona per day keeps my doctor away. And my other beer is gone, so give me a second and I'll be right back. I'm sorry, guys. I'll be back. All right. Apologies for that one. Apologies for that one. I just had to do it. Before I answer the question, I will start a new raffle so everybody can participate in the next one for 20 minutes. Here we go. Exclamation mark raffle to participate. Now I just need to open my beer. And then I believe I'm supposed to answer your question. Did you ask a percentage or a total amount, Toine?
No, a total amount in euros.
Of DSB Bank?
It's how much the receivers build DSB Bank.
I think it's somewhere between 80 and 100 million euros.
80, 100 million.
Somewhere between 80 and 100.
Yeah.
That's
well, it was a very small bank, so it's not a bank that had billions of dollars coming in. No, it's and remember, they have to write hours, have to bill hours, and they could probably bill like 250 euros an hour.
Yes.
So they have to bill 80, hours.
Yes. Okay, let me downgrade it. Let me go between 1 and 5 then.
Okay. Now, this bank went bankrupt in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe late 2008 or early 2009.
Yeah.
And if you Google for this, the cost of the receivers, you get you find an article in Volkskrant, one of the biggest newspapers of the Netherlands, from November 2014. So that was about 5 years or so, a little over 5 years after the bank had gone bankrupt. At that time, the amount of money that the receivers had spent on themselves and their advisors was 46 million euros.
Oh, so at first I was too high and then I really went too low. Wow.
46 euros in billable hours.
Wow. So that is if we take 200, let me calculate this. If we take 200 euro per hour and 46 million divided by 200 per hour, that means in 5 years time 230,000 hours divided by a 8-day working day. Let's call 8 days a working day. 28,000 days divided by, let's just go 365 because whatever. That is 78 years of work in 4 years.
Yeah, so here's another article that says the receivers themselves billed 32 million euros. Other advisors hired by them, they billed another 18 million euros. So together, 48 million euros.
Incredible.
Oh yeah, it went bankrupt in October 2009.
And then in the end, the ones that are paying that are all the people that had an account with more than 100,000, right? Because they lose their money basically.
Yes.
And let's see, who else could have been paying that money? Is it just the people that store their cash in that bank?
Well, there are probably other creditors too, like the staff members working for the bank.
Yeah.
um, and suppliers to the bank. So I'm sure there are other creditors as well, but I think the savers are the people who saved more than 100,000 euro are probably the main victims of.
And this bank was actually known for giving a little bit more interest than all the rest because they were new and they were trying to get into the market at that point. So they had all these great products that you could take and were paying you 0.1% extra. So yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that. I remember that. Although I must say that at that time I was still completely in the dark about what money is. For example, 2008, I was still studying to become a auditor, and in my understand, but in that time, I still believe that there was gold in a vault for every euro that we created. So just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from, right? I
yeah,
really started at zero, so I really didn't know. I remember this bankruptcy very well, but I was working in the system as an auditor myself, and I could not think of anything that the government, anything bad that the government would do to us. So
yeah. Well, that's how most people still are today. Uh, yeah,
for sure, I mean, look at the COVID, look at the COVID 19, as I like to call it on this stream, COVID 1984. Uh, there is now, we are half May. This started half of March, so 2 months later, we finally get to hear the people that dare to go against what is being said on television. For me, I am living online, let's call it like that. Since a week, I have seen a very powerful message I should I can find it back with the name of this doctor. After seeing that video, I am fully convinced that we are looking at the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and that we, are just being fooled once again, just like we have been fooled during 9/11 and like the weapons of mass destruction and that kind of stuff, and that
mhm,
it's being misused to sell us an agenda, which I believe is the global currency reset agenda, which they still try to hide from us through COVID. Let me
yeah,
share. Let me share a video. The name of this doctor is Wolfgang Wodark. I'm not sure if you heard of him. I will share the link with you as well in our private chat so you can watch it back. It's a very interesting video where he basically goes against everything you hear on television. Let's just call it like that. Everything you hear on television is debunked by this man who is a German virologist who worked for the German government in Africa, where he studied. You can all look at. He has his own Wikipedia page where it's all written down. So before I make any false statements, uh, check it out yourself. That's basically in the time we live in. Do your own research because I am just a guy with a clown nose and a rainbow wig. So don't take any word that I say for for for, for
don't
truth.
take my word for it.
Yeah. Don't take my word for it.
Okay. Well, to continue with the story, I think I already said during our last broadcast that he locked me out of my office without me having asked him
Yes.
for a signature that he took over all the books, the
Yeah.
accounts. Uh,
You forgot to ask his signature, right? Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
yeah. Now, well, he just locked me out of the office. So instead of handing him the books and saying, "Please sign that you received them from me," they were at the office. He asked me for the key. I gave him the key, and then he locked me out of the office a few days later. So that's how he took possession of these
Wow.
books, not actually signing for having received them. Then he claimed that he had received only a very marginal amount of books and accounts, and that there was a lot missing. When my lawyer wrote him a letter and asked him what's missing, he just didn't answer. Um, and Instead, he invaded my home. Did I already tell you that? He invaded my home, looking for cash, looking for missing books.
Yeah.
Yeah, he found 1,100 euros, $40, 30 marks, or not marks, francs. And the next day, there was a newspaper article that said that he had found dollars, euros, and francs in my safe without explaining how many euros, dollars, or francs they
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the media. It's the media. I
yeah,
mean,
I
you
need it.
know,
Yeah.
once you wake up and you can see through it, uh, you understand those messages better. But yeah, like we just mentioned, so many people are still completely lost today. That's, when I talk with you today, I am very worried about what's going to happen to me in the future. But it doesn't stop me from, trying to bring out a message. I'm very glad that I'm out of the borders of the Netherlands in a way, so I'm a little bit more untouchable. But
Well, I think the government of the country that you're usually staying in is not that concerned about you because you're no threat to them. You're not really causing them any trouble. You're not calling for their citizens to pay less tax, uh, or at least not in such a way that they actually notice it.
well, I can tell you, Twan, I have hosted a poker tournament last week, the
Yeah.
HonklerHangout Championship of Blockchain Poker on blockchain.poker. And blockchain.poker uses Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin Satoshi Vision to host blockchain games. Sorry, poker games. And I can tell you that there was a big revelation for me because I hosted this tournament. I put that online like I do with everything that I do. And within 48 hours, I received a phone call if I wanted to visit some bar. And when I went there were three people dressed in normal outfit, and they were having a friendly chat with me. But I felt in every way that they were not the average person that would visit that bar. I felt that it was a government employee that I was talking with, and that they were doing that because, well, they had something now. I played a poker tournament, right? And I've been acting very nice. And within 48 hours of that video being made, where I openly state that I do that poker tournament because of the lockdown that I think is completely illegitimate, and I was going to be a little bit civil disobedient because of that. I had some visitor to this stream that yeah, I still cannot really place it, one, but let's just say I had the feeling I was talking with some government employee of Netherlands. And after that moment, I actually found out that the Dutch government has been in contact about my stay in this town with Serbian government. And you can call me a conspiracy nut, and I cannot prove anything of it, but I feel it in every vein of my body because 2 years ago I had an opportunity to make $70 million with Liberland, and unfortunately, the dictator of Liberland didn't allow me to be successful because he is afraid of my leadership, because he wants to be the leader. And that's all good. I mean, I'm very glad that I missed that opportunity because my life would have been taken over by powers that I do not want to serve. But um, they prepared my entry here, and I have the feeling I've been announced to local authorities as a Dutch spy. And let me just conclude it there, and let's not go too deep into it. But I don't even remember exactly how we got to this level. Maybe
Well, I
because
was talking about my battle with the Dutch government. By the way, I do have to leave in about
yeah, don't worry about it. Don't
a minute.
worry.
So if you,
You're a free man, Twan. You're free. You are a free man. Let's conclude it a little bit. I want to tell you a little bit about the future plans I have with our conversation, Twan, because you are a great asset to my stream. Let's be honest. I think you are still the biggest name that I have here. Although we spoke with John McAfee and Adam Kokesh and Vermin Supreme, you are my biggest hero. Let's call it like that. I don't want to, you know, talk bad about any of the others because they are great guys too. But I would like to try to invite various people and have a three-way conversation in the future if you are open for that. Uh,
Uh, sure, depending on who they are, but in principle, it sounds like a good idea.
okay. So I will definitely announce it to you first, and you have to agree on that then. But one of the people I'm hoping to get here once is Roger Ver. One of the other
Oh,
people I would like to talk with is Jeff Berwick.
oh
One of the
yes.
other people that I tried to get here is now I forget the name, so I better not say it again because now you know. But there are some names that I know me alone will not be you know attractive enough. Oh yes, sorry, I mentioned him before. Sven Hulleman, who is a Dutch journalist who now openly states that taxation is theft, and he would love to have a conversation with you. He is from the Café Weltschmerz. By the way, I am sure if you contact him personally that he is going to invite you in one of his shows. But I would love to see him in one of my shows. And he doesn't want to talk with me because I'm all about speculation and he doesn't like that. And that's okay. But I was thinking maybe if I'm just gonna be, if I put myself in the background and I will let the two of you talk, that he will bite, let's call it like that, and that I will have him there because he has a very popular blog. It's called A War Already Lost, and he really goes hard against COVID 1984 and all the measurements that the government is all the measures that the government is taking. And I really like to listen to all that he is saying. Unfortunately, I don't think it's mutual. Let's just say it like that. So I'm a little bit without you know I'm a little bit too free in my wording. You know I just say COVID 1984 and you know yeah I don't care about it. It's my feeling and I speak from my gut feeling and not with my brain. That's
Okay. Would you like me to finish this part of the story, the
let
receiver story?
please
'Cause-
do it, son. Sorry for all my for all my confusing words.
no, that's okay. But if you want me to finish it,
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
and then we should get back to it. Um, let's see. So after um, he actually invaded my home twice, and there was about 6 weeks between the two home invasions. And the reason he did it again is because there was a second company in the group that owned a couple of €1,000 to the bankrupt company, and at least that's what he claimed. And on that basis, he summoned the second company in the group, which was quite a small company that had very little activity, very little in assets. That second company, he summoned it to pay within 2 days, and when the company couldn't, he filed for that company's bankruptcy too. And and on Friday afternoon, around 4:30 p.m., I heard a sound, and I thought it was the sound of my mailbox. So I went to my mailbox, and there I found a letter from a doerder, so like a government.
Receiver.
No, not a receiver.
Oh,
It's somebody who has
a
been authorized by the government to deliver official subpoenas and summons to appear in court, that sort of stuff. And
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
so I found a letter in my mailbox saying that I had to appear the next Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. For a request for that company's to have that company declared bankrupt. So obviously it was Friday afternoon, 4:30 p.m. I couldn't reach anyone anymore. Couldn't reach any lawyer. My own lawyer was on a vacation. This was in August. My birthday is August 17th. That court date, the date in court was also August 17th. So the day of my birthday at 9 o'clock in the morning, I had to appear in court.
Wow.
But mid-August is when everyone takes a vacation in the Netherlands. So my own lawyer had a vacation. Any lawyer in his firm that was a small firm, so there wasn't anyone in his firm that had the same expertise that could replace him. I called like a dozen lawyers, or I don't know how many, dozens of lawyers on that Monday, asking them if they could represent me. And either they were on a vacation or they were busy, too busy to show up the next day at 9 a.m. I mean, it was ridiculous, this term. So I ended up having to represent this company myself. I had to go there without a lawyer to try to prevent the bankruptcy of this company.
For €1,000 bill, that wasn't even a bill, right? He probably just concluded that the one company paid some cost that belonged to the other company, and now they had to be paid back, and
well,
something like that.
even if I mean, his claim was that this company should have paid back this money, and so either it was my position was, and my lawyer's position, who was on a vacation, but after the fact, that was his position too. Either you claim that it should have been paid a long time ago, in which case it was far more than 5 years, and in the Netherlands, after 5 years, you can no longer enforce it. You can no longer sue someone's bankruptcy over it after 5 years have passed. Or your position would have to be that there was no that was not the case. But then why now? I mean, it was very convenient
because
for him.
It was your birthday, Toine. It's very obvious. If I hear the story, then
yeah. So I had to go to court myself at 9 in the morning. My first request to the court was, please give me a delay to find a lawyer. They refused that. Then I had to defend this case myself, and the court found that the company had to be declared bankrupt. So then there was the second bankruptcy, and with the first bankruptcy, he asked me for the books, and I gave him all the books. I pointed to where they were, and I told him that the digital accounts were on a laptop, and I told him which bookkeeper had the laptop, offered to get it to him. He said, no, give me his phone number, I'll collect it myself, which he did, without the bookkeeper asking him for a signature, unfortunately. But at least he asked for the books and accounts. With the second bankruptcy of this tiny company that was basically dormant, he didn't even ask me for the books. The first time he asked for the books was when he was standing in my home after he had invaded it again. And so again, he came there with police and a locksmith, and a letter from this low-level judge that had authorized him to do all this, and so I was given the choice: either you open your door, or I get the locksmith to open it for us. So I let them in, and when he was standing in my house, that's the first time he asked me for the books of this bankrupt company.
Incredible.
So I was never even given the opportunity to prevent this home invasion by giving him the books. So it was absurd. And during this second invasion, he said to me in so many words, if you want this to go away, if you don't want me to hassle you anymore, you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to offer me a settlement. You're going to have to offer me money, and then I'll get off your back.
He was extorting you.
Yes.
Incredible. Incredible. Toine, if we meet back next week, because I hope that you will be back next week, I would really like to know how you are doing today, how you got over all this. And at some point, I would like, if you know, maybe we're gonna have another guest on the show next week. We will see. But I would really like to know how you got over all this, how you can smile today with all that nonsense happening, and um,
I wouldn't call it nonsense. I'd call it criminal activity.
no,
But
okay, yes, of course, but I mean, we have to laugh about it, right?
you
Because
know,
otherwise, if you're gonna be a victim of criminal activity, it's not so much fun. So, how you manage to because this must have had a tremendous impact on your mental health, right? On the way how you perceive life. I mean, if you wake up and this on your birthday and you have to go to court, this is bullying. I mean, come on, let's just call it what it is. So how did you get over that? And also, how are you doing today? And I would love to hear a little bit. I tried to get there, but how do you see the future with all that is happening today? Is this COVID 1984 a legitimate virus, or are we experiencing a global currency reset and are we being prepared for a tremendous depression? And is this a kind of test for what's going to happen to us in October? And as you can hear, I already have the conclusion, but I would like to hear from you how you feel about, let's just call it today's time, right? So for next time, I would like to hear how you manage to survive all this harassment and how you see today's time and what's going to happen in the future. I would love to hear that from you. I think that you have a great vision in general, starting a libertarian party in the Netherlands in the 90s when there was no alternative. Let me make this clear to the people that are watching today. Everybody was cheering for the national football team. Everybody loved the queen, the king that rules today has inherited something from his mother that the mother was the real tyrant in a way, right? I mean, I don't want to. Uh, she has also, of course, been highly manipulated into. She couldn't say no either. She couldn't say no because there were too many things at stake. She wanted her family to be wealthy and profitable and um, but yeah, she really, the king of today is in no way similar to his mother in a way. And so
okay, I will need to leave in 4 minutes. So
I get that.
uh,
Yeah, sure. That's why I already introduced for next week a little bit. And just one, I want to thank you a lot for joining us today. If you want to add anything in these last 4 minutes, please go
oh,
ahead.
yeah, well, you asked me about my view on the Corona crisis. So I'm
Yeah, go ahead. If you can fit it in four
since,
minutes, go try or make a start.
yeah, since it's topical, I'm happy to address that. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I don't think it is harmless or it's just like a cough or a cold or a minor flu.
Let's first of all say that it exists.
Yeah, I think it is a real disease, and I do believe that it is probably more contagious than the regular flu. And it is probably also, to a certain extent, more lethal than the regular flu is. At the same time, I think there are a lot of there are not just differences, but also a lot of similarities with the regular flu. Because with the regular flu, a lot of people die from that as well. I think the worldwide estimate is that something like, I forgot the exact numbers, but I think it's like 500,000 or 1 million people a year, roughly. I mean, it differs from year to year because in some years you have a particularly bad flu, and in some years you have a flu that's not so bad. But some
Yeah,
between 500,000 and 1 million people a year worldwide are killed by the flu.
because of the way how we register it. But okay.
Yeah. And yes, it's true because usually it's older people, just like with Corona. Usually they already have some comorbidities, they already have some sicknesses, and they already have a compromised immune system.
Yeah.
But they die sooner than they otherwise would have if they hadn't contracted the flu.
Okay. Fair
Uh,
enough. Fair enough.
and and sometimes it's like in what was it, the Hong Kong flu in the late '60s. I think that killed a lot more people. I
Yeah.
forgot
Yeah.
numbers, but I think a couple of million people died in the late 60s worldwide from the Hong Kong flu. So it's not unique. I mean, it's happened before, and it happens every year, but not to the same extent. But it's not like this is the one-time thing that's never happened before. It's just a little bit worse than
Well, the media
regular.
certainly projects it that way. Let's
Oh,
yeah.
yes. And of course, it is a tragedy. I mean, for all the people that died and all their families, it is a tragedy. But let's put it in perspective. If you look at the Hong Kong flu, if you look at the Spanish flu, if you look at the common flu, the regular influenza that comes by every year, there are a lot of similarities. And so far, it seems that it's not only not as that the Spanish flu was a lot worse than Corona, but also the Hong Kong flu was a lot worse than Corona. So you have to put it in perspective. So that's my first point. That doesn't mean it's not a problem. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be careful. Doesn't mean we shouldn't stop shaking hands. I don't shake hands anymore. But we have to put this in perspective. That's my first point. My second point is that the kind of measures that, when taken voluntarily, are a good idea become tyranny when it's enforced by the government. So if you decide on a voluntary basis not to shake hands anymore, like I do, if you decide on a voluntary basis to be careful when you visit people that are older or have a compromised immune system, that you either choose to do a video call instead, or keep your distance when you visit them, on a voluntary basis, that's all fine. That can be smart. That can be responsible. But when the government starts threatening people with fines and threatening them with jail time for not taking these measures,
And not just any kind of fine.
yes,
Once you get fined, you have a record of being a true criminal. Much different than, for example, driving through a red light.
yeah, in the Netherlands, if you cut someone's hair, I mean, since last Monday, we can get haircuts again. But before Monday, it was illegal to get a haircut.
I just had mine, Twan.
And if you got caught getting your haircut, the haircutter could get a €4,000 fine for cutting your hair. That's to give you an example.
And it has been given to a barber.
Yes, and some people even ratted on their neighbors. I mean,
Yeah.
there are cases where people saw that their neighbor, who was a haircutter, cut someone's hair in the shed in the garden. They called the police. Police showed up and fined them. So we're back to.
We have spoken about it on Freedom Radio. It was an item.
Yeah.
Cannot believe it.
Yeah, that's the kind of society we live in. I don't know if you heard of this case of Typhoid Mary. Typhoid Mary was a woman who lived in the United States in the late 1900s. Sorry, the late 1800s, the late 19th century. And she worked as a cook for rich families. And wherever she prepared food, people died. And when a few of the family members died, she would resign, find a new family to cook for, and then a few people would die there, and then she resigned and found a new job with a new family. And this continued.
I found a Wikipedia page called Mary Mellon.
Yeah, Typhoid Mary. So she was probably responsible for many dozens of people having died, because she knew this, obviously. She resigned because her customers were dying. That's why she resigned. And she didn't tell the new customer, the new family she's cooking for. She didn't
Do
say,
you have any credits? No, I don't have any credits.
So when she was finally caught up with, she was put in jail. She was locked up for a couple of years. And then she was let out after she promised she wouldn't do it anymore. She wouldn't work as a cook anymore. She was let out, and then after a few years, she started cooking again, and people started dying again. Then they locked her up for life. And I think that's actually a reasonable approach. If somebody knows that they are infectious with a dangerous, deadly disease, and decide to take the risk with other people without telling them and leading to their deaths.
But it is like that already.
And I mean, in that particular case, I think it was justified to lock her up. But of course, what's happening today is that hundreds of millions, billions of people are being locked up who are completely healthy, who pose no risk for anyone. So
And don't have the risk themselves of dying because of their healthy state of being.
yes,
For
so
example, somebody of my age, there is for me 0% chance that I die of COVID. I just don't believe that I have any chance of dying. I am not diabetic. I am or how do
well,
you
it's
say?
not zero, but it's very, very small. It's an extremely small risk.
Okay, it's the same as I walk on the street and I can be the chance that I
Yeah,
get killed
you're,
by a car is
yeah,
higher.
your smoking
Exactly,
is
exactly.
more dangerous probably.
And without it, I wouldn't feel as much alive, right? So
Yeah, I happen to have done a little bit of research recently about California, and if you lived in California, if you spent time in California from the outbreak till today, if you were there the whole time, then the risk by being in California for these months is the risk of dying from it, from COVID, is similar to having smoked 50 cigarettes in the entire time of your entire life, or having taken a bicycle ride adding up to 700 miles in your entire life. That's the same risk of dying as having spent these months in California, dying from COVID. That is. That puts it in perspective, just
yeah,
how big the risk is.
and that is a
Uh,
little bit what we're missing, a
yeah,
perspective. And
yeah,
it's, or I should do it to you. It's,
yeah.
it's very narrow mindset that we are being brought by the media today.
Yeah, so it used to be that quarantine was a measure used for sick people that were infectious and that were at risk of infecting others with a very bad disease. That's how it used to work. And that, again, can be justified. But now billions are locked up that are completely healthy, and that cannot be justified. Um, I guess you could justify locking up healthy people in a very limited circumstance based on a cost benefit analysis. If you live on an island or a place that has zero cases of a deadly disease, and then before the first case arrives, you have a quarantine for people coming from abroad for 14 days, and you let them into your country, but you don't let them in the first 14 days, and thereby you can completely eliminate the risk of the disease spreading. Then you can make a case that there's a cost-benefit analysis where the restriction of people coming from abroad being quarantined for 14 days is worth ruling out the risk of anybody.
I get your logic here. I get it.
But it's too late for that because the disease is already here. So it's too late for that type of measure. That can only be done if you have zero cases. You have to do it early or not at all. Um, so the way I see it is the government is taking these measures without any regard for cost-benefit analysis. The cost is gigantic. The economic cost alone. I'm not talking about loneliness, human cost, loss of quality of life, because that's hard to measure. But simply economic costs in dollars and cents. That itself is already estimated to be in the trillions of dollars worldwide.
Which we
That,
don't know about today, Twan. Don't spoil the fun yet, because this is about to happen in October.
yeah,
We're not supposed to know that yet.
yeah. So um, the question is, how many lives are lost because of that? Because
Exactly.
poverty kills. I mean, in rich countries, people live to be 80 in general. In poor countries, people live to be 60. That's a 20-year difference. Poverty kills. And the government is causing poverty by imposing these measures. They are deliberately delaying all sorts of healthy forms of progress. They have stopped private companies from developing tests, from building masks, from trading masks. And there are thousands and thousands of examples of how government regulations have contributed to the disease or to have contributed to delaying finding a solution to the disease or a partial solution to the bad effects of the disease. So government again is not solving any problems here. Government is the problem. or it's adding to the problem.
I think that's a great conclusion for today, Toine. Because we are 8 minutes over your time. You have been announcing it. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here with us again today. I hope to see you back next week, where I will continue a little bit on this topic, because it's so much in everybody's life at the moment that I really would like to. It's not that I am so much against everything, right? I wish that I could be with somebody for once, but I really think it's needed that some alternative sound is being made. Let's call it like that. Some alternative vision on what's happening. Personally, I see all of COVID as a preparation for a global currency reset. Um,
Oh, yeah, there's a huge economic crisis. It's already happening. It's going to get worse. And the central banks are not going to be taking any of the blame. All the blame will be given to the virus.
exactly,
So
exactly.
it's a whipping boy.
That's what that's
Yeah.
what I see in it. Let's call it, well, let's just say that I would love to hear you talk about it a little bit, and uh, we will see. I really hope that I can get Sven on this show, because he also has a great opinion on this entire matter. He has a law degree. He speaks very powerfully. I hope that he can do it in English for once, because he usually talks in Dutch. But I really hope that Sven Hulleman can be a guest in one of the future streams. Um,
Well,
so we will see. We will see. We will see.
Thank you for your invitation, and thank you for the pleasant conversation. And
All right, Van. I'm glad that you found
next
it
time.
pleasant. I thank you for being here with me today, and let's see how the time will continue. What we feel to next week, right?
All right.
How time will change.
Talk to you then.
All right, Van. Have a good
Goodbye.
evening.
You too. Goodbye.
Bye bye.